I do find it interesting that spring is supposed to be the season of renewal and new beginnings and starting things again. But I feel like a lot of people find that energy in autumn, myself included. I'm not sure what it is. It could be carryover from school days, school year starts and you're probably at least a little excited to start school again. You start learning and doing things and seeing people. And summer can feel like such a suffocating time. It can be the heat, or it can be that you feel like you have to do a million things. You gotta go to the beach and the amusement park and hang out with those people and have these holidays and da-da-da-da. And it should be fun. Sometimes it's just not. And so when autumn rolls in, it's like, there's less expectation now. And then you can actually enjoy things. And then of course you have your usual, the fashion is better. Maybe you like baked goods, as some people do. And so there's lots of things that people like this time of year. And I like movies and music and things. And I wanted to share my fall favorites in the aforementioned categories. If you are new here, my name is Katie, and there's a car going by. My name is Katie, and I like to like the things I like. That's my catchphrase. But I have a general interest in things that are all vaguely artistic. So I like movies, music, TV shows, books, and I do have my specific tastes, and I haven't explored all of them yet on this channel, but I want to branch out, and this is part of that. So I'm going to give you some autumnal recommendations for the season. Now, I'm sure that you already have your own list. You know what you like. You don't need me to tell you. But there's always that chance. And I'm not going to be suggesting anything that's particularly unique. Nothing too underground. So, probably one of my favorite autumn movies in just that it feels so much like autumn times 100 is Fantastic Mr. Fox. Now, if you're not a Wes Anderson person, I feel that enough people still like this movie, even if they're not into Wes Anderson movies. I think that people who like animation like it, and it has a bit of a wider audience in that regard. So it's very autumn. It's such a golden movie, and it literally takes place during fall, and you've got your stop motion animation leaves going across. It really makes you want cider. So if you haven't seen it, I recommend it if you like things that feel like autumn. So next, you've heard of this one. You know this one is coming. It's When Harry Met Sally. Now, Nora Ephron likes to do this thing where the movies take place over almost a year. Like, I'm thinking, because You've Got Mail, which you can also watch as an autumn movie, starts in the fall, New York in the fall and bouquets of sharpened pencils. But you can't exactly say, oh, it's a totally autumn movie, but there are enough moments of autumn in it, definitely more so than Sleepless in Seattle, which only takes place over like a couple months now that I'm thinking about it. Well, Sleepless in Seattle isn't on this list, but When Harry Met Sally is, and You've Got Mail definitely can be. But You've Got Mail also has very good Christmas feel, and it also has a really good spring feel at the end. So depends on how much time you want to give to other seasons during this relatively small window of the year where you're feeling that peak autumn life. Moving on, this one doesn't necessarily feel autumny all of the time. The movie is called The Classic. It is a Korean movie from the early-ish thousands. I want to say 2003, but man, is it really? Yes. It is 21 years old. So I think a lot of the autumn association for me, I actually haven't watched it in a while, but I do like it. It's bittersweet, so it's not the peppiest of movies, but autumn is not the peppiest of seasons, and I think that incorporating a little bit of sadness and melancholy into your diet at this time can be quite satisfactory. So the autumny sense of this movie is more so that it has to do with school. In the present day, the characters are at college, and then there are flashback stories. I would say the majority of the story takes place in the flashbacks, and for the most part that focuses on students in high school. So it's more so the school association, but it's a very pretty film, and again, bittersweet. It is a love story. The main actress, Son Ye-jin, who's very good. I like her in a number of things. She plays the present day character, and then she plays her own character's mother at roughly the same age in the past, because in present day she like finds her mother's love letters, and then you see some of the flashbacks. So I guess that's my one offbeat recommendation. Maybe you didn't see that one coming. It can also be a good summer movie. It's the school thing. It's the academia that makes it autumny. All right, moving on. This one doesn't have a whole lot of nature in it. It does have New York in it. Again, this movie is called Searching for Bobby Fischer. I guess you could call it a sport movie, but the sport is chess. When everybody was really into chess because of the Queen's Gambit, I laughed a little bit because I had already had my chess phase because of this movie. If you haven't heard of it or seen it, it is about it's based on an actual kid. It was a chess prodigy child, and the main plot focuses on the parents, mainly the dad, trying to get the kid Josh set up in this world that he doesn't understand, but he knows that he has a gift. But then there's the pressure of winning, and Josh isn't really the ruthless competitor that may sometimes be required in order to succeed in such venues. And the Searching for Bobby Fischer part is in reference to the famous chess player Bobby Fischer, and there's this looming notion of the idea of finding the next Bobby Fischer, or literally finding Bobby Fischer, because Bobby Fischer kind of disappeared. I don't know if he literally disappeared, but that's how it's framed in the movie. But again, we have, chess kind of has this academia association, and it's the 90s, so you've got a lot of like comfy sweatshirts and stuff like that. But it's a good movie. I liked it as a kid, and I still like it. So I was trying to determine if there was a specifically autumn feeling Jane Austen movie, and I know there's a million adaptations and I haven't seen all of them, so maybe I'm missing out on some peak autumn aesthetics. But out of the ones that I like, I landed on Persuasion from 1995. It's the rain. It's pretty cool weather throughout the whole thing, and they look cold when they're outside, and it's raining a lot, so I think that kind of adds to it's the dreariness, the melancholy, the softness, so it's autumny in that sense. So that's my Jane Austen autumn recommendation, because a lot of the other ones are kind of summery. I did consider Sense and Sensibility, also from 1995, and I both agree and disagree with myself. It's out there if you want it, but I'm not touting it as an ideal choice for this criteria. Okay, this is another one where we don't get a whole lot of autumn scenery. I think it's the food consumption, which, on that note, don't watch this movie while you're hungry. But my next recommendation is Eat, Drink, Man, Woman. It's an Ang Lee movie before Sense and Sensibility. I think that if you like Sense and Sensibility, you will like this movie. It's about three sisters, the adult sisters, who still live with their father. It's a Taiwanese film, so I do think it was shot in Taipei. Yes, it was shot entirely in Taiwan. Yes, because Ang Lee is from Taipei. So this was before Ang Lee was really big over here. It was before Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. So I would call it, I guess, a family drama. I suppose it has a lot to do with the relationships and family, and then there's so much food. It's the cooking scenes and what gets cooked are, statements, and it's all like Chinese gourmet stuff, so you're probably not going to have any of that on hand. But if you just at least have some like dumplings to eat while you watch this movie, you might be a little safer, but do not watch it when you're hungry. But I do think that it's the gathering of people around meals that make it feel like it's appropriate for this season. I actually don't know what season it takes place in. I don't know, but I do think it's a cozy movie in its own way. So that's another recommendation that maybe you hadn't heard of. All right, moving on, but moving back to Wes Anderson. Yes, it's Wes Anderson yet again, but we're gonna circle back to some school, and we're gonna, it's time for Rushmore. Rushmore is his second movie. If you don't like Wes Anderson, how do I put this? If you think that the Wes Anderson of the past 15 years is too Wes Anderson, then going with something like Rushmore, yes, I even have the screenplay, might actually be a good move for you, because he hadn't gotten fully Wes Anderson yet. But it very much takes place over the autumn and through the spring, but the bulk of the movie takes place, they literally say September, October, November. I guess, okay, if you haven't seen or heard of this movie, it is about Max Fisher, who is a scholarship student at the elite private academy of Rushmore, and he wrote a play when he was in 4th grade, and that got him into the school, and he's great at that. But he tries to do a million extracurricular activities, and he sucks at his general academia. And he's also kind of a he has a personality. He's a bit of a jerk. And then, so he might get expelled from school, and so that's a problem. But then he meets this teacher, and he kind of forms feelings for her. And then he also meets Bill Murray's character, who is a rich man. He's a sad rich man, because this is a Wes Anderson movie. And so you have to have a rich man in a suit who is sad, and a father. And that's what we have here. And so different character arcs are at play, and I love it. It's one of my favorites of his. I guess I haven't mentioned, I love Wes Anderson. He's my favorite director. I love all of his movies. Sometimes Rushmore is my favorite. Sometimes it shares that spot with other films. So has a great soundtrack. Absolutely, we're gonna circle back to that later. But for right now, you could try this. I'm trying to think, if you like XYZ, you'll probably like this. Atmosphere-wise, if you like Dead Poets Society, which I know could probably be on this list, but a lot of people do love that movie. It's a little depressing. So I'm not including it on this list, but if you like the whole private school thing, then Rushmore has that going for it in its favor for you to consume it for the first time. Alright, and now we're gonna end my movie recommendations. I'm probably missing so many, but that's okay. I was thinking we've got to have a Hitchcock movie on here because, autumn, murder, and other mysteries, they kind of go hand in hand because it's spooky season and things die in spooky season. But I was trying to think, it's not, just because Alfred Hitchcock is mysteries and suspense all of the time, that doesn't mean that all of his movies are appropriate for fall. At least I don't think so. Like Rear Window, yes. Suspenseful. Murder, indeed. Sweltering hot summer. We're not gonna watch it right now. And so the one that I ended up picking is actually Rebecca, which, hey, if you like the song Tolerate It by Taylor Swift, Taylor said that she was inspired by reading the book Rebecca, and so this is the movie adaptation. I do think it's different. I have not read the book. I only know what my sister told me when she read the plot on Wikipedia for the book. So I do think it is different, but Rebecca is good and spooky. It's foggy. There's some decent fog, and it's eerie, and it's got so many things going for it in that suspense, spookiness. It was a later Hitchcock watch for me, and I don't know if I was surprised by how much I liked it, but I definitely think that it exceeded my expectations. I think I figured, well, I must have seen all of the good Hitchcock movies by now because we prioritized seeing them. But Rebecca is a really good one. So, moving on to TV shows, and speaking of murder, there's so many mystery TV shows out there, and for the most, like, you can't really go wrong. Like, if you want some, I don't know what is it about mystery TV shows and being like cozy. So you have your, you have your classics. If you really want to lean into it, you can go with Nancy Drew and the Hardy Boys. If you haven't heard of the Nancy Drew and Hardy Boys TV series, is it corny? Absolutely. I gotta talk to you about something. Okay, let's rewind. Columbo, also great. You can watch this for your murder mystery pleasure in the autumn, if that's the vibe that you want. Columbo does definitively take place in LA, so it rarely feels very autumny, but it's shockingly comforting. I can't tell you, just it is probably my ultimate comfort show. But here's the thing about Columbo. I was trying to explain about Nancy Drew and the Hardy Boys. This has nothing to do with autumn. This has everything to do with how it was aired. As far as I know, I could be wrong, but Columbo was part of a TV series called like Mystery Movie Theater. Which I believe Henry Mancini of Moon River fame wrote the theme song for. And my understanding is, I think there was a designated time slot, but it wasn't always going to be Columbo that week. I think it was like shared with a couple of other shows. And like Columbos can be long. They're movies. They are TV movies. But I believe that it was in rotation. And I don't know of that happening in any other decade besides the 70s. And speaking of which, Nancy Drew and the Hardy Boys, they weren't together for the most part. In their TV series, it would be tonight on Nancy Drew or tonight on the Hardy Boys. And it was in rotation. I don't know if they would do like one Nancy, one Hardy Boys, one Nancy, one Hardy Boys, if it was like two Nancys, two Hardy Boys. No idea. Wasn't alive. Was not checking the TV guide. But what I'm about to say, we're finally coming back to what I was trying to tell you. I prefer the Nancy Drew episodes. Point blank. They're more straightforward cases, like I witnessed this thing happening and then there's no evidence that thing happened, and how did that happen, and it's a cover-up, and oh, there's a ghost. No, there's not a ghost, it's just somebody in the walls. Much more straightforward things like that. The Hardy Boys can get a little unbelievable and a little sci-fi or something. I don't know, just like technology and things. They're just not as believable to me. I'm sorry. And I think Pamela Sue Martin is a better actress than Parker Stevenson and Sean Cassidy. I know it's very harsh. It's very harsh of me. But they are mysteries and great outfits. So anyway, there's your another mystery. And then of course you can always go with Murder, She Wrote. It's very cozy. I don't know if it's necessarily autumny, but it takes place in Maine. And Maine gets like foggy and stuff, and that feels autumny. Now, you've probably heard of those, but now let's go. We're gonna hop across the pond. We're going back to England. Were we there before? Yes, we were there for Persuasion. This show is critically acclaimed. It's popular, but I don't hear people talking about it as much. The show is called Endeavour. It is a prequel series to I think it was mostly in the 1980s. It was a show called Inspector Morse, English police detective in Oxford. And so this is a period piece. Still takes place in Oxford, but it recants the origins of this well-known English detective. There's too much going on. Hold that thought. English detective. Felix. But hey, you know what? Speaking of spooky season. Oh, it's a mascot. It's a mascot. Oh, there he is. Oh, he's the most beautiful boy in the world. Can you hear him purring? He's so cute. Oh. Anyway, I don't see this show getting talked about a lot. I think it's excellent. It starts in 1965, I think, and goes up through the 70s. So it takes place at Oxford. So we have that school element coming in. He's not at Oxford, but he has to talk to people at Oxford. And there's lots of snobbery, those Oxford dons. It generally isn't too gruesome. I don't think they're really going for shock value. There's a lot of good characters and a lot of good relationships, friendship type of things, and I really enjoy that, and I think the mysteries are good. I really like this show. It's got mystery, murder, academia, the 1960s, tea. What else do you need? All right, so next we have a bit of a funny one. This is actually, it's an episode of a 2-part miniseries. You can watch both episodes of the miniseries, but this is not a fictional work of art. This is the autumn episode from Monty Don's Japanese Gardens. Monty Don is a gardening personality in England. I imagine that most people in England have heard of him. I feel like he's like the guy. He is on the main show, which I think has been going for ages, which is Gardener's World, and then he kind of hosts it, and then you follow other gardeners and they talk about things. I haven't watched too much of that, but the Monty Don content I absolutely love to consume. He does a lot of little series, and so the Japanese Gardens is part of a larger project where he goes to different areas around the world and focuses on various gardens that are there. So he has Italian gardens, he has French gardens, American gardens. He just did Spanish gardens, but I haven't seen it yet. But then Japanese gardens. The 2 episodes focus on kind of the height of the natural explosiveness in Japan. And so the first episode is spring, it's the cherry blossom season. And then the other episode is autumn, and it's very red, very beautiful. So if you like a little bit of art, a little bit of history, a little bit of gardens, a little bit of people talking about things, a little bit of walking around, a little bit learning about other countries, and then I truly recommend Monty Don anyway, but this is a specifically autumn episode. It's about an hour long, and then the spring one is about an hour long. You can just watch them together. Shh, you don't have to wait until spring. I forget. Now, the last one that I'm going to say is another British TV show that I can't believe I don't find listed more, especially for autumn. It takes place throughout all of the seasons, and the show is Lark Rise to Candleford. I love this show. It is probably one of my favorite shows, and when autumn weather rolls in, I say, it's Lark Rise to Candleford season. It's just one of those things that's just, there's the baked goods and the tea and so many things. If you haven't heard of it, if you like English period dramas, then I highly recommend it. It takes place in the very late Victorian era and mostly focuses on Lark Rise, which is the poor hamlet that's kind of out near all of the fields, and most of the people who live there are land workers. And then Candleford, which is a certain distance. I'm not going to spoil the first episode for you. It is a certain walkable distance from Lark Rise, and it is Candleford, which is much more middle class, and people have businesses, they have their own businesses. And so the catalyst for the whole show is one of the Hamlet girls who is showing a lot of promise as being maybe just a bit more intelligent. She reads, she writes, and so she is sent to work at the post office over in Candleford. It's very cozy. It's generally not, I will give you a little spoiler right off the bat just to comfort you. If shows where there's a lot of death bothers you, don't worry. There are a couple deaths and there are a couple sad things, but it's not Downton Abbey. That's all I'll say. And so it's really good and I love it. Cozy, it's glowy, it's golden. One of the main visual motifs are the wheat fields. I'm pretty sure it's wheat, and it's lovely. We're really getting dark here, sorry. I really recommend it, and I haven't seen it on too many lists, so I'm adding it here. All right, I apologize for how dark it's getting. It was bright, sun is going down, it's cloudy. I'm gonna try to brighten this in post, but here we go. We're gonna just quickly go through music. You're not going to be surprised by these first two, because if you are not new to this channel and you know of the two things that I speak about right now, only right now, we're going to expand. But I think it's generally consensus, that's not a word, that Taylor Swift's two main autumn albums are Red and Evermore. They're two different kinds of autumns. Evermore is definitely much more November to me. It has that sparseness and that dreariness about it. Red still has a bit more life, so it's a bit more September, October-ish. So circling back, I said when we were talking about Rushmore, I said we were gonna circle back. And so for music, I'm gonna recommend the Rushmore soundtrack, and I'm going to recommend the Fantastic Mr. Fox soundtrack. Wes Anderson is known for his soundtracks. He loves a good needle drop, and the music that he picks is super integral to his style of filmmaking. So his soundtracks are always good. They're usually, it's a lot of like 60s, 70s music. That's kind of his game, especially Rushmore is mostly British invasion, 60s music. So Kinks, he loves the Kinks. He adores the Kinks. Chad and Jeremy, of course. There is a Donovan song in there, which I don't think made it onto the soundtrack. I don't know why. So, moving on. This is a bit of a funny one. I don't know if this, is it autumny? I don't know. I think folkiness, folk music, generally has an autumn feel for me. Maybe that is a Wes Anderson thing because, you know, he kind of has some of the folk type music, like the 60s folk music in Rushmore, and so I have an association. But I'm actually going to recommend the very best, this is the name of the album, the very best of Peter, Paul, and Mary. It's one of their greatest, it's their greatest hits collection, and it's a little melancholy and a little grainy, which we like a bit of grain in the autumn, do we not? Some of them feel a little upbeat and summery, but those can be the August tunes. And then my last one, we're gonna stay in the 60s, and we're gonna stay just a very Wes Anderson life is what it is. The band is the Zombies. They had hits, you know them. Yes, you do. It's the time of the season. Doo, doo, doo. If that's the only Zombies song you know, I declare they have so much more to offer. But if I had to go with one album, I think Odyssey and Oracle is kind of one of their statement albums. Has a lot of good tracks on it. It's hard to describe why it feels autumny to me. I think it's the melancholy. It's the softness. There's a grayness about it, but in a colorful way. That doesn't make any sense. It's a captivating grayness. It's a grayness that gives depth instead of flattening. And that feeling I associate with autumn. Felix is like, this, you've been not around me for too long. So Odyssey and Oracle is probably the Zombies album that I would recommend. As a quick final note for games, if you want your mysteries, there are so many Nancy Drew games. If you haven't played them, you can, you know what? You can preview them. You can go look at my channel. I've got lots. Choose one that sounds interesting to you, and you can just watch a little bit and be like, oh, is this something that I would be interested in? I think the answer is yes. More people need to play these games. They have a lot to offer. If you don't know, so most of them, they are point and click games, they are mysteries. They generally, especially the earlier ones, have an educational slant. As far as what is most appropriate for this time of year, I would probably go with Message in a Haunted Mansion, which is the third one. I think that like Midnight in Salem is supposed to be autumny, but I haven't played it, and B, it's when they went for a new direction, and it's Danger on Deception Island is nice and foggy, so that, you know, it's always good for all. Warnings at Waverly Academy has that private school vibe going through it. We are so dark right now, so that's always a good choice. Curse of Blackmore Manor is a spooky one. You can't really go wrong. There are some that are just overtly warm weather or like take place in the desert, so it just doesn't feel as autumny, but they're all mysteries and they're all good, at least to some extent. Wow, you can barely see me. Okay, those are my autumn recommendations. I'm probably missing a bunch of things. I didn't even get into books. I have to lean in really close. That concludes our episode for today. Please like, subscribe, leave a comment. I promise I'm going to try to be better about uploading both my Nancy Drew playthrough games and other Taylor Swift content and other content in general. I'm trying, I promise. Okay, have a good autumn. I'll see you soonish.